All right. Now, withholding tax is another service that if you look at a lot of a lot of firms are offering companies or businesses that they do not know what to do. You know, they charge them 500 ringgit per service, you know, and that's like, to me, that's like crazy lah. Okay, so I'm gonna teach you all today what to do. I will give you some practical side of the teaching so that you can you can use it for your work if you want, or you can do it for people also, but not as a tax agent. If you know anybody around that needs a service, you tell them, I'll charge you 300 ringgit. Then you just help them to fill in the form and bring to the office and submit. That's all only, you know. Okay, so it's actually a very simple thing, and yet because people do not know, that's why they can charge so high, right? Okay, now what exactly is a withholding tax, and when that there will be withholding tax, and how does it work? Okay, so let's start with the theory first. Now we all know that withholding tax usually apply when you're making a payment to a non-resident. Okay, so when you're making a payment to non-resident, and it's not on all the payment to non-resident, it's only on certain types of payment that you make to the non-resident that might attract withholding tax. Okay, certain types of payment might attract withholding tax. Now so how does it work? All right, how does it work and why? Okay, now let me give you the idea of why withholding tax is even in place. Okay, now the reason why we have withholding tax is because the government, the Inland Revenue Board, wants to protect the Malaysian government from loss of tax revenue. Okay, that was the whole idea. They want to protect government from losing tax revenue. So what they do is this. Example, okay, you must see, suppose now a foreign company that is in a foreign location. Now because it's a foreign company and a foreign location, it's most likely that this company is a non-resident but has to pay Malaysian tax. Now you got to think about this, you know. Why would you need to pay Malaysian tax considering you are a non-resident? Okay, then you must think back about the scope of charge. Last time we talked about the scope of charge before, and if you remember, we said that whenever income is Malaysia derived, then you have to pay Malaysian tax. It doesn't matter whether you're resident or you're not resident. As long as your income is Malaysia derived, you have to pay Malaysian tax. Now, but you think about this. I want you to think about this. If this is a company in overseas, it's not a Malaysian company, it's overseas. And when now you say that this overseas company has to pay Malaysian tax, questions is, how would the company do that? Now, isn't it difficult? So there will be a practical problem. Okay, so it's going to be a practical problem in the sense that it will be difficult for these non-resident to pay Malaysian taxes simply because they are not in Malaysia. Makes sense, right? How you expect a person that don't even know anything about the Malaysian tax system to pay Malaysian tax? What do you think? Now, it's always easier if we switch a position. Please think like that, okay? Let's say you have a very famous YouTube channel, and now you're making money from YouTube, and YouTube is supposed to pay you $30,000 for your contents. And all of a sudden YouTube tells you, but you know, you gotta pay the US government taxes. And now they tell you that these are all the things you have to do. You've got forms, and then they tell you all the responsibilities. But you're in Malaysia, you know. How are you gonna do that? You probably will say, I don't know how to do that because I don't understand a single thing that you say. Or you might even want to say like, I don't care. I don't care because this is not my country, right? I mean, who bothers about US tax when I'm in Malaysia? Now, you may have that kind of thoughts in mind to the extent like you say, okay, then maybe I don't want to deal with withholding tax. I mean, I don't want to deal with the US taxes at all. Now, see, if this is so true about how you are thinking about US taxes, it's the same on how other non-resident will think of Malaysian taxes. It's just a different perspective, right? And if all of them decided not to pay Malaysian tax when they need to pay, the government is losing revenue. So what is the easiest way for, you know, let's say US is trying to make sure that you pay up the taxes when you earn money from YouTube? Now the best way is US will just tell YouTube, hey, before you make payment to this YouTuber, can you just hold back a portion of his money and give it to us? Well, that's as simple as that, right? That solves the problem. Now that give rise to withholding tax. It's as simple as that. Okay? So think about this. So to make things simple, okay, the Inland Revenue Board will get the payer to withhold the tax when making payment to the non-resident. That's it. Hold back and make the payment to the non-resident without that taxes. And that is why we call it withholding tax. Okay? Now in Malay, we call this as cukai pegangan. That's the Malay word. I mean, you must know a bit of Malay word because, you know, when you deal with inland revenue, you still need to know bahasa, right? Now, so how exactly does it work? All right, how exactly does it work? Now, I'm going to run through with you with this basic picture to give you an idea about how does it work, okay? And then later on, we'll come back and look at the rest of the concepts again. So I'm going to go through with you with my notes, the diagram in my notes. Now, so I would like to start off with you to give you a basic understanding of what is the withholding tax system. Then only we will go into the most important question. Now, the most important questions that you're going to have next time when you come to work, the most important questions that you're going to have is you're going to ask this. Hey, I'm going to make a payment to a foreigner. So do I need withholding tax? You know, that kind of questions will get very normal in your head next time when you work. Every time you make a payment to a foreigner, you're going to ask, do I need withholding tax? Do I need withholding tax? Now, you probably will say like, you know, does it really matter? Yes, because it's going to affect you when you don't comply. Now, I'm going to share all that with you in today's lesson. So, this is why it's important. Remember, it's going to help you a lot, okay? 500 ringgit, you know, help people to do this kind of work of submission. It's a lot of money, right? Okay? So, it's something that really is very easy, okay? So, let's just jump in, okay? Now, I do not know what is all this company. I just Google when I prepared the notes those days, whatever companies, and I saw a logo, I just plug it in and I put it in the notes to make it easier for us to imagine, okay? Now, let's say we're gonna start with a company called ABC Supply Co. Incorporated. It's a foreign company, so which means it's a non-resident, okay? This is a non-resident. Now, And what ABC is doing is ABC is actually granting some, let's say, secret processes, the right to use secret processes. So they say we have this very special formula to mix whatever thing, and then they say we're going to let you use it. And you know, as a result of using their secret resources, you need to pay them, right? So when you make a payment for the use of that secret resources, this is called royalty. Okay, royalty. So is ABC now send an invoice to you and say that, okay, you're supposed to pay me 60,000 ringgit for the royalty. Now, to be honest, in real life, your invoice is unlikely to be in ringgit, because most of the time these people are foreign companies, foreign entities. They'll probably invoice you in a foreign currency. So you actually need to do currency conversion, all right? But here in the class, we're just using it in ringgit. So let's say now that the invoice is 60,000 ringgit, okay? Now think about these guys. The right thing you probably are thinking is, okay, I owe ABC 60,000, right? So I should just pay 60,000 to ABC, okay? And that's it. That's the end of the story, because ABC gave me the right to use the secret process, and I got to pay back for whatever they bill me, which is 60,000. So that's the cost to me. Okay, that's the cost to me. Now, but if, which is part of what we're gonna learn later, if I'm telling you that this royalty income, because ABC is receiving it as an income, right? That this royalty income that ABC receives is subject to Malaysian tax. Now, why would your income subject to Malaysian tax? Now, we said the reason just now, right? Because our laws say such income is Malaysia derived. So we're telling ABC, you know, the Malaysian law says that the income is Malaysia derived. You got to pay Malaysian tax. Well, then ABC is going to say, but how am I supposed to pay Malaysian tax? Now, that's why the government said, to make things easy, we will now impose the withholding tax. So there will now be a withholding tax requirement that says, take 10% of the gross royalty. Because we're going to make things easy, we can't be having complicated formula. So the easiest things is, how much you're going to pay? 60, right? Okay, just take 10% of that 60,000 and give it to us. So instead of just giving 60,000 to ABC, I mean, the amount is still 60,000. Okay, the amount is still 60,000. But instead of giving 60,000 to ABC, you will have to do this. You should take 6,000 out. Now, why 6,000? Because it's 10%. So you just take 10% of that 60,000. So you take 6,000 out, and then you give it straight to the Inland Revenue. And you have to tell Inland Revenue that this 6,000 is ABC's tax. It's not your money, you know. The 6,000 is actually their money, because you're paying on their behalf. So you're telling them that this 6,000 is the withholding tax that you're paying on behalf of ABC. So you're helping ABC to settle the taxes. You see that? So you will take that 6,000, which is 10%, and give it to the Inland Revenue. And then you will tell ABC, I can only give you back the balance, which is 54. Because the amount in total is 60, you see. So I'll just give you a balance, which is 54,000. Now, later we have to talk about what if ABC say that, no way, you got to give me full amount 60,000. You know, even if there's taxes, this is your problem. Now, we're going to deal with that later on. We call that as when the non-resident does not bear the withholding tax, how would that affect the calculation of the withholding tax? We're going to see that later, okay? But let's just assume that ABC is very happy to, you know, okay, 54, fine, we pay the tax. So you just take 6,000 and give it to the government. Now, once you pay this 54,000 to ABC, we will tell ABC that this net of withholding tax royalty, it's a royalty, but we already net out the withholding tax, where withholding tax is final tax. So we are telling ABC that means you don't have to do anything already. The government made it so simple that I will be in charge of your taxes, and it's as simple as I will just take 10% out of the money and give it to the government, and the story ends there. So ABC, you just take the money. You don't have to do anything. See, life is easy, right? Now, why we are having that system? Remember, the logic is the government wants to protect themselves from losing revenue. So they need to make a very simple system to make sure that at the end of the day, we'll get the money. To the government is we need the money, okay? Now, so notice that this payer called Mahuma Sendirian Berhad, at the end of the day, the royalty is 60,000. That's their expense. It is 60,000. But you are splitting the amount into 54 and 6. It's part of their money. It's not your money. It's their money. You understand? Now, so we're going to understand a bit more about responsibility. Now, obviously, we must learn things like what is the deadline or what is the due date, because timing is very important. If I do not know the timing, then basically I would be saying, so do I have how long to send the 6,000 ringgit to the government? 6 months, 1 year. You know, you need a timing, right? So obviously timing is very important. So what does the law say? Now, the law tells us that the responsibility is this: you shall pay the net of withholding tax payment to the non-resident, and that amount that you withheld, you have to give it to the Director General of Inland Revenue within 1 month after the date. Now, I just highlight the word within 1 month after the date the payment has been made or credited to the non-resident. So I give you an example. I say if you remit the payment on the 13th of July 2021, then the withholding tax must reach the government. Last day is 13th of August 2021. It's actually quite easy, right? So don't follow the date of the invoice because it's not important. You understand? So I can give you a questions and say like, okay, the invoice is on the 25th of May, all right? But question now is, when will you send the money? So let's say you paid on 19th of September 2021. So assuming that is the date that you're using. Now, if you paid that on 19th of September, then this 6,000, right? This 6,000, you have to remit latest by 19th of October 2021. You follow? That's the last date that this money must reach the Inland Revenue. So you're gonna ask the questions. What if I never send the payment on time? What if I'm late? Or what if I don't even know? There are people that don't even know that there's withholding tax. Obviously, you won't know unless somebody has taught you, right? So what if I don't even know? Or what if I purposely stubborn, I just don't want to follow what the government say? What will happen to me? Now, that's why you have to understand the consequences, okay? Now, this will take a bit long to discuss because there's quite a number of things that you need to know. So we have some consequences that I'm going to show you over here about the non-compliance, okay? Now, let me finish off the consequences, and then only I will go back to start with the basic to tell you how do you ascertain why or when that there will be a withholding tax, which is the most important things that I think we all need to know when we're in practice. Because obviously, if you have a client, your client is going to ask you, need withholding tax? Need. and then you got to answer yes or no, right? And if you don't know how to answer yes or no, how are you going to do your work? So that's why that's going to be the next things that we're going to study. Now, so let's start with the non-compliant. What exactly is a non-compliant? Now, a non-compliant can simply means that you did not withhold the tax at all, okay? Doesn't matter whether you're purposely or you just didn't know. You know, a lot of times people didn't know, you know. It's not like they purposely, but they didn't know, okay? Or sometimes they are just careless, they overlook. Now, or another thing that is also considered a non-compliance is when you're late, no? That means you miss the due date, okay? That's late. You're supposed to settle the withholding tax within the 1 month after the date of the payment, but you didn't do that. So what will happen? Okay. Now, so let's just look at the notes for a while. Look at the notes for a while. Okay. Now, the first thing I need you to take note is this. Section 39 has already made it very clear. Now remember, Section 39 tells us about the non-deduction expenses that you're not allowed to deduct. Section 39. Now, Section 39 tells us that whatever expenditure that you're supposed to have deduction will be disallowed until the withholding tax and the penalty are fully paid. Okay. Now, but when we say disallow, I think one thing I need you to be very clear over here is the expenditure must be revenue expenditure first of all. Now, example, like if you're talking about royalty, if you're talking about commission, you know, these can all be expenses that are revenue in nature. Now, but I want you to take note, if it's a capital expenditure like installation fee, okay, if it's a capital expenditure like installation fee, that it really cannot get a deduction. By itself, an installation fee is not even revenue expense. You don't even get a deduction in the first place. But this installation fee could be qualifying plant expenditure for CA purpose. Okay, it could be qualifying plant expenditure for CA purpose, but because of the same problem that you never comply with withholding tax, okay, that you fail to comply, so we also disqualified it as qualifying plant expenditure. Okay, now that's something that we do come across in the exam questions, especially when it comes to the calculations of capital allowances. But I'm just going to write down this. Just write it down. If you don't understand, it's fine. Don't expect like everything I say you're going to understand, because sometimes, you know, you're like watching a movie, right? At the beginning of the show, you start to see and then you say, I confuse a bit, but you only start to understand when you're at the end. Okay, now I understand what is that. Okay, so just hold on for a while until we come to the end. Okay, now, so generally we're just trying to tell you, if you don't comply with withholding tax, right, you don't get a deduction. Okay, you don't get a deduction. Now, which means, if I'm just using back this picture, right, if let's say you never hold back the 6,000, okay, you never hold back the 6,000, or you never give the 6,000 to the government on time, let's say you never give it on time, then we are telling you that this 60,000, right, you cannot deduct. So when you're doing tax com, you got to start from the profit before tax, and you actually have to add back the royalty 60,000. You don't get a deduction. And you know, when you don't get a deduction, you're losing your tax saving, because the deduction is equivalent to the tax saving. If your tax is 17%, every 10,000 that you don't claim, you're going to lose 1,700 ringgit because of the additional taxes that you have to pay. Okay? Now, what is the late payment penalty? Now, late payment penalty is actually 10% of the unpaid penalty. Okay, it's actually 10% of the unpaid penalty. Unpaid penalty. What am I talking about? Unpaid withholding tax. Okay, sorry, my mind is not very good today. Okay, now, so the late payment will be 10% of the unpaid withholding tax. Okay, now, so how much is the withholding tax that you're having? Then you just take 10% of it. Okay, now, this is the most straightforward things that we see. No deduction, 10%. Okay, no deduction, 10%. All right. Now, the one that will actually be a bit complicated is this. The deduction that you should not have claimed. You should not have claimed by the due date of your tax return because you have not settled your withholding taxes and the penalty. You should not have claimed. But what if you're unaware of it? You are stubborn. Okay, you should not have claimed, but you went and claimed. Then you may get one more penalty, which is called penalty for incorrect return. Now, this thing can sound a bit complicated, so allow me to use a diagram to explain it to you. Let's do it slow and try to understand. If you don't understand, you might have to replay the video and listen all over again because it's very important. Okay, now you see, there's this company called ABC that year end is 31st July 2020. Okay, and the company is supposed to file a tax return form. All right, we call that as a tax return form, the form that shows how much taxes that you have to pay. Okay, for a company, the filing of tax return, it's 7 months from the year end. You follow? So you just count yourself, like, if your year end is 31st July 2020, what is 7 months from that date? Now, you're going to get 28th of February 2021. So again, you see, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. See, 7 months? Now, that's why we're telling you, for year of assessment 2020, you're supposed to submit the tax return latest by 28th of February 2021. Now, some of you in practice say, hey, no, I remember the law say, my boss say something. That's because in practice, the government usually grant a longer grace period. They don't follow exactly the law because they give you some allowance to delay. You understand? Now, we're not talking about that because we're talking about exam. Exam follow the law. So the law says 28 February. Okay? Now, so why 7 months? Okay? Now, there's a small issue with ABC. This is their problem. They're paying a non-resident a gross royalty of 30,000. And that's without withholding tax on the 10th of April 2020. Now, and I'm telling you right now that ABC supposed to deduct and remit the withholding tax. So, when you fail to do so, you have a non-compliance. Okay? When you fail to do so, you have a non-compliant. Now, when you have a non-compliant, the first thing that Section 39 tells you is this 30,000 is a non-deductible expenses. So you are not supposed to claim this expense deduction until you have settled the withholding tax as well as the penalty. So it's not like the government say you cannot deduct. The government just say wait until you settle everything, then they allow you to deduct. So you see, you got a problem now. The government say you cannot claim the 30,000 yet. The word is cannot claim yet. Until you settle everything, then you can claim. Now, this is the problem. When you submit the tax return, now normally the tax agent got to be very careful to check. That's why tax agent usually they will ask whether this invoice that you're paying, is it to a non-resident. They usually need to be very careful to check. Okay, so what happened now is in the tax return form, you have claimed the 30,000 royalty. Okay, you have claimed the 30,000 royalty. Now what happened if you have claimed the 30,000 royalty? Now if you have claimed the 30,000 royalty when you are not supposed to, now this is the problem, you see. So guys, things and see, if you claim and if you don't claim, what will the amount be in terms of your taxes? Now I'm just going to give you an example of a figure. Now let's say my chargeable income, okay, let's say my chargeable income is 200,000, and this is after you've deducted the 30,000. Okay, your chargeable income is 200 after you've deducted the 30,000, assuming you're using SME rate of 17%, your tax payable will be how much? Will be 200 times 17, so it's actually 34, right? Now think and see, if you did not deduct the 30,000, your chargeable income should have been how much? If you have not deducted the 30,000, your chargeable income should have been 230, you know. And if I'm using the SME rate of 17%, your tax payable should have been, sorry, I use calculators, 39,001. Now, what the government is arguing with you is this. The government say, because you have wrongly claimed an expense. Okay, this is what the government is saying. Okay, because you have wrongly claimed a deduction that you cannot claim. Okay, because you have wrongly claimed a deduction that you cannot claim, you have understated your tax by how much? By 5,001. You see 39,1 and 34, your tax is 5,001. Okay, your tax is 5,001. So the government will do this. They will impose a penalty for incorrect return, which you say, how much is that, right? Now, if you follow the law, it can go up to maximum 100%. So that's scary, you know. That means the government can ask you to pay a penalty of 5,001. Now, of course, in practice, we don't go for 100% all the way. Okay, normally we'll just go for 45% for a start. But it's still a lot of money, you know. Because question is, why do you want to pay this penalty simply out of your utter carelessness? So you say, okay, so sir, so now you tell me, what should I do? Especially if, let's say, you're a tax agent. If your client never paid the withholding tax, and then you go and claim the deduction for your tax for your client, and later the government slap this company with 5,100 penalty, then the client blame you and say, hey, you don't know that this cannot claim one. Then the client say, you pay the penalty. I don't care, this is not my mistake, this is your problem. Say how? So that's why you need to come up with a solution to tell your client, okay, this is what you're gonna do. Okay, so what do you do to advise your client? Okay, what do you do to advise your client? Now, so I will need to use back the same picture, but I will explain to you what is the right thing to do. Okay, so just hold on. Let me let me do something you don't like lah. I'm gonna copy and paste. Okay. Okay. Now, let me tell you what we can do. Okay. Okay, the line finally is straight. Sorry, I got that kind of disorder. They call what? What disorder? OOCD, is it? Or like I cannot see something bangkok a bit, I must see it straight like that. It's just my problem. Okay. Okay, now, so going back to the same diagram, if you are the tax agent, what is the right thing you must advise your client, or the right thing you must do is this? You will tell your client, when you submit the tax return, you will tell your client, don't claim the 30,000 yet. Okay? Cannot claim. You tell your client, sorry, this 30,000, don't claim. Your client say, don't claim. 30,000 is a lot of money. Yeah, you cannot claim first. Because if you claim, you're going to get a penalty for incorrect return, which is this problem that you're seeing on the screen. So tell your client, don't claim. Then you tell your client the right thing to do is this. Because we don't claim, that means we will submit based on the chargeable income of 230,000. I'm using back the same example, okay? You say, I'm going to use this amount and submit this in the tax return, and then you will pay 39,001. Okay? 39,001. Alright? Then you tell your client, go and settle all these penalty that you need to pay. So let's say the client come here and say, okay, I'm going to settle all the withholding tax and the penalty. The client say, I'm going to settle. So you have paid the 3,000 because the withholding tax is 10%, so it's 3,000. Plus the penalty, you pay late 300. So the guy said, I'm going to settle. Okay, so I'm going to settle everything now. So when I settle everything already, then you tell the client, okay, now you can claim. But you already say you don't claim. So what we're going to do is we will do this, that right after this so-called everything has been settled, we tell the client, we will now make an application for you to make an amendment to the tax return for the government to return back the money to you. Because you pay extra, because your tax is only supposed to be 34,000. Okay, 34,000. So since you only settle later on, so we tell the client, never mind, you pay early, then I will make an application for you to get back the extra tax that you have paid. So that way you will not suffer penalty. But the client will suffer cash flow problem, you see, because the client will have to pay extra to the government, and you know lah, government may not be able to refund you so fast, they got to check and so on. Okay, now so this is why if you know the correct thing, then you should do the correct way. Okay, now so this is the worst case scenario that you should advise your client. If they really don't make any payment, tell them don't claim first. Okay, then later on you tell them that after you settle everything, I will help you to make an amendment to get back the extra taxes that you pay. Now, if the client say, do you have a better way that I can claim so that I don't have to suffer that? Can. If you have a better way, means you solve the problem before the due date. That's why at the end of the day is when you know the problem. That's why if you only know all this last minute, you already need to submit tax return. You don't have a choice, you see. But if you discover this early, example, now I'm going to change the scenario again. Example, oh, sorry. Okay. Here itself, you check the document for your client and you come across this payment to the non-resident, the royalty of 30,000, and you say, hey, you didn't pay the withholding tax. They say, I don't know anything. Now I'm telling you, you have to pay, How to pay, Very simple. You give me 500 ringgit, I do the service for you. So that's how they pay. They charge you for the work. Can see not? But of course, actually, you don't have to. That's why when you learn all these things, next time when you go to work, you can tell your boss, I can do it for you. You don't have to pay the tax agent. It's very easy one. Can see not? Then your boss say, now I know the value I'm employing you, because you can add value to my firm. You can help me to solve problems. The way we add value is because we solve problems for people. You're not the source of the problem, you're the source of the solution. So you must be able to solve problems for them. Then only bosses want to employ you, man. Can you see? Then you expect bosses will share rewards with you and give you promotion, give you bonus. You got to be there to be their solution. Now, so you imagine that what we're going to do is we tell ABC, well, even though you're late, you're not that late, because the return is only due 28th of February 2021. So you go and remit the withholding tax. Of course, you must give the penalty lah, because it's already more than 1 month. So the 3,000 plus 300, you go and settle it now. Okay? Now, once you settle it, then you don't have problem already. Then at the point of the submission, you can claim the 30,000 because you have complied with the withholding tax. You've complied, so you can claim, no problem. So now you see, this is why this can be a bit more complicated, because of the situations that you're in. We do not know which situations that you might apply in life, because at the end of the day, it's all going to be different. Now, as I said, if this sounds a bit complicated to you, you might have to replay the video. You might have to watch it again, because there are a lot of things sometimes it's not easy for you to understand the first time. Okay, but at least after you look at that, then you understand. Okay, so now at least I know. So when you know what's the right thing to do. You know what to advise the client. You understand? Now, so this is what happened when you don't comply, and that is why my notes here I put here that the deduction that should not been claimed by the due date, if you have not settled all the withholding tax and penalty, if you go and claim, you're going to get a further penalty for incorrect return. So the solution you can have, I gave you two. One, you settle everything before the due date, then you have no problem. That's the best solution. But you may not be able to do that because of timing. Because maybe when you realize that, it's already too late. Now, once it's too late, then the right thing to do is tell them what? Don't claim. The right way is don't claim. Until later they settle, then you make an application for them to get back the extra taxes that they've paid. Now, for that also, I will explain to you how to do it. Okay? Now, so I've explained this part to you to let you understand. So let's look at some numbers so that you can strengthen and reinforce your understanding. Let's look at some numbers. Now, they ask you to compute the amount of penalty if withholding tax was remitted to the Inland Revenue on the 30th of September 2020. And now they ask you to compute again the amount of penalty if, let's say, the withholding tax was only remitted on the 19th of March 2021. I'm giving you two scenarios, okay? Now, the story starts with Sunset Sdn Bhd that the year end is 30th June is required to submit its tax return and pay its tax liability for 2020 by 31st January 2021. Now, I'm giving you the facts. If your year end is June, you've got 7 months and the due date is 31st January, okay? So, in the tax return for 2020, it has claimed a deduction, and that's a 50,000 royalty payment to Wrongjoy Limited. And Sunset settled the net royalty to Wrongjoy on the 16th of May 2020. Now, if you have acted correctly, you should have remitted the 5,000 to Inland Revenue by 16th of June 2020. If you have acted correctly, okay? So anything after 16th of June 2020 is what? It's a late payment. If it's a late payment, you're gonna add 10%, okay? How do I get 5,000? Because the withholding tax rate is 10%. I've told you just now about royalty, right? Okay, that there are more withholding tax rates that we're going to learn later on. Now, the company has a paid up ordinary share of 3 million. Now, this is very important because this is to tell you that this is not SME. So at least you know that their tax rate is 24%. Okay, so the first situations that we're having is this. How much penalty that you're supposed to pay for the withholding tax, assuming that the company is settling everything on 30th of June 2020. Now, how do you apply the steps to work out the answer? So you just ask yourself these few questions. The first questions that you're going to ask yourself is, so when must Sunset submit the tax return? Now, we know the answer is 31st January 2021. Okay? So, if you know the date is 31st January 2021, then you got to ask yourself, by 31st January 2021, have you complied with the withholding tax rules or not? So, had Sunset complied with the withholding tax rule by 31st January 2021? The answer is yes or no? Yes. Because the question already said that they're going to settle everything 30th of September 2020, right? So yes, you've complied. Okay, so if you have complied, the next questions you're going to ask yourself is, so can you claim the royalty payment? Answer is yes. No problem. You can claim. Okay, so that means the only penalty that we're going to have for this withholding tax is late payment. So there will only be late payment penalty, that the amount will be 5,000. The withholding tax is going to be 5,000, right? And the late payment penalty is always 10% of the withholding tax. So you got to pay 500 ringgit. It's not a lot, you know. It's not a lot. So a lot of times we come across many cases that people, they sometimes don't submit the withholding tax on time because of the amount of work. If it's not a lot, every time it will go up and down. So sometimes they accumulate in a batch and then they submit together. So some they pay late, some they didn't pay late. So it's actually not a lot because it's like 10% of the withholding tax. 10% of the withholding tax is not a lot lah. Okay. Now of course it's still money, but it's not a lot. Okay. Okay, but how much will that penalty be, right? Assuming if they're going to make remittance for all the withholding taxes on 19th of March 2021. Now, so we're going to go through the same process of determining the answer. You're supposed to submit the tax return by 31st January 2021. That one didn't change, correct? Not? Okay. So the question that we're going to ask is, have you complied with all the withholding tax by 31st January 2021? The answer is no. Okay, the answer is no. Because you will only be settling the withholding taxes and the penalty in March. That means in January 2021, the answer is no, you've not settled. So if you have not settled, that means can you claim the deduction? Sorry, I think I'm right here. Can you claim the deduction? No, you are not supposed to claim yet. You're not supposed to claim that. But question said what? You have already claimed. So since you have claimed, the government will say that you have made a mistake. So you have made a mistake. So we call this as an incorrect return. That means you have understated your tax. Now, how much tax have you understated? You think and see, okay? You have wrongly claimed a 50,000, and your tax rate is actually 24% because you're not SME. So that means you have understated your tax by 12K. Okay, you understated your tax by 12K. Now the maximum penalty, right? I only use the maximum penalty and I won't use the word 45% because in exam we follow the law. Okay, Sometimes questions will state the rate and say, please use 45% as your penalty rate. But sometimes if they don't state, right, then you can just say assume that maximum penalty is 100%. So as a result, that your penalty for incorrect return is actually 12,000. Okay. Now that is the penalty for incorrect return, and don't forget, you have to pay back the 500, the late payment penalty, which is 10% of the 5,000. The 5,000 is not a penalty. The 5,000 is actually the tax. So the penalty is the 12,000 plus the 500, which is very scary because that shows the amount is very big. Okay. Now, so back to the picture that I gave you just now when I explained to you what happened. Okay. Now I've told you just now, the right thing that you should do is you should not claim anything. Okay, the right solution is you shouldn't claim anything. And then we say just now, if you I had deleted the diagram, you shouldn't claim anything. And then once you settle everything after the due date of the tax return, then you should apply. That's why I've told you, you should apply from the government to tell them that, okay, I settled it, now I want to take back my money. Now, so this is what the law says. That you should use this section, the correct step. Okay? So the correct way is don't claim the expense by the due date of the tax return if you have not complied with withholding tax. Don't claim. That's the correct way. Okay? You don't claim. And then once you have settled them later, you should apply. Okay? From the Director General to return the excess taxes paid. Now we're going to use something called Section 131A. So there is a provision in the laws that says that once the withholding tax has been paid, then you shall within 1 year after the end of the year which the payment is made, make a request from the Director General to review your return, and if he's satisfied, he will return you the taxes back to the taxpayer. Now we'll actually see this again next time in the tax admin notes, but at least now you can get an idea that that's the right thing to do.